Blizzard were not kidding when they said this patch would have story in it. It's actually way crazier than 10.1 itself. It kind of tells us everything that we need to know about, say, the next expansion and the next few patches. Obviously, spoilers ahead, you've been warned. Let's start with the massive stuff. It pretty much hard confirms that Xal'atath is coming back. There is big voidy stuff happening soon, maybe even our next expansion. Iridikron then just kind of described the far future of WoW content. Chromie did exactly what she would do and broke time to save Nosdormu, and Alexstrasza and Verinoth actually had one of the best character dialogue moments this game's had in years, which was kind of shocking and unexpected to me. And to top all of that off, we've got the question of Farak's purpose finally being answered. And that really does, for us, firmly answer the question of where we're going next to defend the tree. There's still no crazy big action in the cinematics or mad tension, but for the first time in a while, I'm actually finding myself pretty excited about where WoW's story is going. And I'm also pretty excited about this sword pin. I mean, hey, it just looks sick. Anyway, the sword pin, it's from our art team. It's one of the many things that you'll get over on the loot tier of our Patreon, but of course it's not just the loot. Also, early access to video content, exclusive video content. I just got some cool new gear that I'll be building things with, and I'll be doing behind the scenes content for that. And of course, our lore podcasts, of which there are many. You can check that out and support our team with the link down below. And with that said, the dawn of the infinite. To get to the big things, we've got to set him up. This patch opens with Nosdormu realizing the end is coming, so he asks you to meet him. But instead, you meet Chromie, who has you do a bunch of stuff. Just that it turns out that's actually Morchi, misleading you into helping her. Chromie shows up to set things straight, but she's too late. The Infinites have already taken the Bronze Temple and can now enact their master plan. And kind of frustratingly, that bit was, of a big cool assault, was, off screen, which is unfortunate. But anyway, we go into the dungeon, which thankfully is awesome, and we kill a whole load of bosses. The important part, though, is when Chromie spots Iridikron and realizes that we've got to stop him. So we run past the aspects in their pre-Titan form. Iridikron is standing over Galakron's obscenely huge corpse, using what Chromie calls an ancient equivalent to the Dragon Soul to absorb this, blue, black, cosmic, voidy looking stuff. It reminds one of, say, the spell effects from the Sarkareth fight. And he says it's the endless hunger. Of course, as we know, Galakron was a hungry, hungry boy. Now, one excellent fight later, it turns out we distract him for long enough to allow Chromie to thwart his ultimate plan, destroying the ancient voidy dragon soul thing. And that was probably a mistake, because seemingly out of nowhere, Morozond appears and announces the end. Chromie then fulfills a promise she made to Nosdormu in 10.0, that she will find a way to stop him. It's a bit understated in-game, but this moment is fundamentally quite massive because Chromie rewinds time. She takes us all back to the start of the dungeon, only to find that Morozond's awakening changed the true timeline, so it's all infinites now. So then we go back in to stop it, and this time, instead of running past the proto-aspects to stop Iridikron, we actually stop and help them out. And with their aid, we're able to stop Chronolord Deos from turning Nosdormu into Morozond. That's a big win, major success, everyone can go home super happy, except wait, in this timeline, Iridikron actually was able to do what he came here for. That's the point. And then we get this cutscene. He shows off the unexploded Void Soul, looking like honestly the OG StarCraft cover, and he bursts open a Void Gate. He then villain monologues, which, hey, they're allowed to do, those are fun, about how the Harbinger is going to steal Azeroth from the Titans' grasp, and that the World Soul is the only thing the Titans ever wanted, and that when the Titans finally do come back, that Iridikron will be waiting. Then he steps through the Void Gate, revealing his partner in crime. Look closely, see the silhouette? Try to think of who that looks like. And I'll come back to you with an answer in just a little bit. We come out of the dungeon and everything is fine. Job done. Everything's back to normal, even better since Nosdormu actually feels alive again. What a big win. The infinite threat is dealt with once and for all. We can all be happy. Or is it? Because let's rewind. Remember this. in the leveling campaign of 10.0, they introduced us to a character called Eternus, an infinite dragon willing to set aside their differences and work together with Chromie to get out of the bind the two of them fell into. Now, we have not seen Eternus come back yet. Despite Eternus doing a very cliche, "when we meet again" line, which clearly shows the Blizzard intent for Eternus to be a character we meet again. In that very same cutscene, Chromie says that she will disobey Nosdormu's orders and those of the Bronze Dragonflight at large in order to save him, especially when she says time encompasses all possibilities, because that is totally an Infinite Dragon thing to say, whereas Nosdormu was like, listen, dude, I'm fated to fall. That's the way that it is in the true timeline. Don't subvert that. What does Chromie do? Immediately subverts it. Chromie, kind of like our, pocket-sized Infinite Dragon. Now, remember what just happened, right? Our character's first instinct was to go and stop Iridikron because he was doing dastardly shit. But Chromie takes us back to do things differently. And that's where it gets interesting, because if Nosdormu is supposed to become Morozond at this exact point in time that we play, well, then based on all of his warnings, Chromie may have pushed us off the Titan's one true timeline. And that's the bit that I think is key. Off the Titan's timeline. Do you think the Titans are going to be particularly pleased about that? No. They're going to be like, dude, we had this entire plan, and you just fucked it. Why did you do that? And of course, because they love order, they don't like it when people mess up with their plans. Also, this dungeon is called Dawn of the Infinite. It's not called Dusk of the Infinite. So clearly this is only the beginning. It's like, yeah, we save Nosdormu, but it's called Dawn of the Infinite. Absolutely, it'll be the case that this is really where the Infinites start, because Chromie is starting to break all of the rules, and that is obviously how Chromie ends up becoming Morchi, the infinite version of herself. Now, it's a bit unfortunate, though, that our characters don't engage in this and don't talk about this in the in-game dialogue. And I know that's rubbed some players the wrong way, but I think when you actually look at the broader story, especially take into context the 10.0 campaign, I think it does make sense. This is in no way the end of the Infinite Dragonflight. From what I understand, from what Blizzard even said in an interview, Infinite Dragon stuff will go on, but like this is kind of Nosdormu dealt with for a bit. But anyway, let's move on to our next major patch. Fire and Ice. Okay, we know more about this next major patch because the cutscenes keep going with Alexstrasza asking Nosdormu where Iridikron has gone. He says he doesn't know, but he gets a vision where he sees burning embers heading for the World Tree. Alex then says they need to warn Merithra, and then we get hit by a name drop. Amir Drasil. A-M-I-R. Now in Persian, apparently that means immortal or life. And of course in WoW, Drasil means crown, so this tree could be called the Crown of Immortality or the Crown of Life. And Farak's going to try to burn the thing down, which is probably not good for us. Yes, another world tree getting crispy. Or maybe not, because if patch 10.1 was the Farak patch, it seems quite obvious that 10.2 will be the Veranoth patch. And I think we were right in that one, because Alexstrasza finally gets a moment with her now very lost, but at one time dearest friend. And I think this might be the best people talking cinematic in Dragonflight so far. It is two old friends bickering over what broke them apart. Something happened in the past that was too much of an atrocity for Veranoth to stomach, and Alexstrasza just let it happen. Apparently the Titan forces, so probably the Keeper tier, they did some experimenting on unborn drakes that were still in their eggs. Alexstrasza now calls that an abhorrent act that should never have happened, which is quite funny because that's kind of what's going on with the order-infused water, so I have to assume it's maybe some other sort of like more invasive experiment. Anyway, Veranoth calls her a liar and says that she's naive, believing in compromise and a return to the old days when all the things were good, but that for her only vengeance remains. But the point is she did go to see Alexstrasza, just like Alex did after the Incarnates were imprisoned. That she still cares, I think, enough to actually confront her, right, to see what she had to say, means something. I think that might even be enough for her to eventually be convinced that Iridikron's way is not right, and perhaps when faced with Farak's lunatic violence, because he seems truly unhinged and living his best life right now, and of course the damage of destroying the New World Tree, maybe she will be convinced to join up on our side. I mean, think of it this way. Fire, if fire is a threat to life, what better to defend it than ice? We've long been overdue, I think, some dragon combat, and maybe the idea of Alex, Verinoth, maybe Azera working together to fight off Farak, that might actually be the sort of big, cool moment that WoW needs. One thing I really do gotta say I like, though, is whenever Alexstrasza in that conversation goes to do her it's almost like Vin Diesel looking back at the camera and being like, family. You know, when Alex is just, no, it's about unity and hope and a bright future and platitudes and happiness and kindness. I do like how Verinoth's like, motherfucker, no. you don't get to just do a speech at me and undo everything that happened. I thought that was good because it was finally a character actually, I think, engaging with Alexstrasza in a way that even just allows Alexstrasza to be a character, frankly. Now, what that means is, bring on 10.1.7 and bring on 10.2. I want to see some of that action. Could be pretty sick. Alright, it's been long enough. Have you figured out who that silhouette is? I think it's obviously Xal'atath. I mean, the silhouette matches. The Void Gate is just an upgraded looking version of the one that she walked through whenever we last saw her. So, Iridikron is mentioned as a harbinger, right? Well, so did this book in the Forbidden Reach, and that kind of tells us everything we need to know about what's probably the next expansion. Quote, even now the Harbinger gathers the children of the first flesh to reclaim what was lost. They must remember their vows and serve those to whom they owe fealty. Right, so Xal'atath, the Harbinger, is maybe working with Iridikron. That seems kind of awesome. And, if you want even more evidence, in one of the alternative timeline quests, there's a humongous hint. One of the enemies that shows up is called Zalkir the Chosen, but the bit that matters is their title, because their title is the Maw of Cthulhu. And Cthulhu is interesting because this was a place that Xal'atath told us about way back in Legion. Do you remember the old days? We would get those little whispers from Xal'atath whenever we had her equipped, and there would be loads of lore teases there. And one of them was about a cataclysmic battle for Cthulhu between N'Zoth and Y'Shaarj that happened in the very, very ancient past in and around the Broken Shore. And to make this even more obvious, the mob drops the Black Blade of Cthulhu, which could be maybe a little bit referring to Xal'atath's dagger. It was the Black Blade of the Empire, but it was also referred to as the Black Blade in-game and by players, so I wonder what they're playing with there. But to move on, why is she back? Here's a quote. The Harbinger speaks of a primal power that seeks the end of order. Such rage can be bent to serve our ends. A hunger lost to the ages will be reclaimed. That's so obvious, right, isn't it, guys? Galakrond's essence, the hunger, this black and blue magic that Iridikron was after, is actually a form of primal power, this primal hunger, right? And we know that from how Galakrond is described in the game's lore. This, of course, is separate from the Blight stuff, because that was dripping out of Galakrond, and, it was not being zooped into the whole ancient soul thing. It was clearly extracting that form of magic, which I think certainly raises a few questions about what hand Tyr had, or did not have, in the creation of Galakrond, and what's really going on there. The last pages of the book say, when these things come to pass, the Harbinger will fulfill the final prophecy and complete the Awakening. Given how Iridikron was talking about Azeroth and how the Titans only wanted the world's soul, that puts everything into perspective. So then, let's begin with the final rundown. Buckle up, this is it. Iridikron made a deal with Xal'atath. Those were his dark dealings, but also he made a deal with the Infinites. And now, with Chromie choosing to save Nozdormu instead of stopping Iridikron, the endless hunger is now in the hands of the Harbinger, whose end goal seems to be wakening up Azeroth. Which, as an aside, means Ashara is likely coming back as well. And there's a decent chance that this is probably our next expansion's focus. Though don't worry, it's not going to be all voidy and purpley. And here's the evidence for that. The recent 6-month sub is a koi fish, and it has a saddle that looks like a naga design, but it's very colorful. It has a description about the Ankoan, and also it's an aquatic mount. Now, if the trend of the 6-month mounts sometimes being models from the next expansion holds, and that has happened regularly, like with, say, the Fey Dragon in WoD, the Rune Saber in Legion, the Sky Blazer in Dragonflight, then we can imagine we'll be seeing Naga and Ankoan in a sort of watery, colorful environment. And then also, Iridikron is convinced that the Titans will come back to Azeroth, so we're likely going to have to deal with that too. Closer to now, so patch 10.1.7 and patch 10.2, we will have a focus on Alexstrasza, Farak, and Viranoth, as well as Marithra and Ysera as we deal with Emirdrasil, the New World Tree, and the fiery threat that it faces. At some point, if it's maybe a 10.3 or beyond, we'll also have to face the consequences of saving Nosdormu and deviating the one true timeline. All in all then, for a 0.5 patch, this has a crazy amount of important story in it. Though, Blizzard really need to show us more action, and they need to start having their characters acting a bit smarter, instead of sounding like an 8-year-old's attempt at positive writing. If we can have more dialogue between the Red and Blue Dragon sisters, I think we will be flying. Because Viranoth and Alexstrasza was actually an example of some good work there. Very different to say Nosdormu just being all blah blah blah, but we fight for the future that is good. And that just feeling very just limp. Okay, how do you feel about this patch's story? I think that it could have been told better, but I actually think the setup here is really exciting. It's giving me positive vibes instead of the usual drama. Being played so hard by Iridikron is actually great. Leveraging Chromie's, you could say, emotional weakness. I mean, for some it's a weakness, some it's a strength, but leveraging Chromie to kind of mess up the whole timeline, like that's smart. It feels quite satisfying how it's pretty much all happened. Just really him putting us between a rock and a hard place and making us choose. I think that was a real good move. Iridikron is just feeling more and more like a real solid character. And I suppose for me, maybe I'm wondering, is Iridikron going to be saved for later, not even in this expansion? Or is it going to be that Iridikron ends up being like the Archimonde to our Warlords of Draenor, right? Where the final patch is a massive blowout against Iridikron. But in doing that, it kind of opens the way for a lot of other stuff. Just like how the ending of Warlords of Draenor opened the way for Legion. Interesting stuff. I'm actually enjoying this quite a bit. Let me know then what your perspective is, how you feel, and I'll see you next time.